Welcome to the Heart Rate Variability Podcast, where we explore the exciting science behind heart rate variability. The material discussed in this podcast should not be taken as medical advice. Please check with your medical provider to make sure any suggestions or strategies are right for you. Visit us at the OptimalHRV.com website to learn more about the Optimal HRV app, download a free copy of Matt's book, Heart Rate Variability, and also get show notes and additional resources around heart rate variability and its applications. Welcome, friends, to the Heart Rate Variability Podcast. I am back with Dr. Dave Hopper to continue our series on healthy breathing. Dave, I know we've had two of our friends on in between, Anna and Janelle, since we last spoke to you, and really enjoyed those conversations, but also excited to get back to the concept of healthy breathing. So for those of you that did not hit Ina's episode and Dave's first episode, I would suggest you go back to the healthy breathing series. Won't be too far back in your feed. I think 4 ago was where we started out with Ina. Dave had a great follow-up where we talked about nasal breathing. But Dave, we didn't get much past the nose. So I know we've got some ground yet to cover. So I think we kind of left off with the concept of the diaphragm. And so let's just pick up from there, my friend. What is the diaphragm? I know we're going to talk a little bit about posture as well. So I'll just throw that pitch over the plate to you, and hey, take it from there.
All right, perfect. Well, happy to be back and getting the rest of this in. And yeah, I tend to get stuck because it's just our nose or mouth, such interesting things there.
Yes.
But yes, when we talk about breathing, you can't really talk about breathing without talking about your diaphragm. So that is your main muscle of inspiration. So when we talk about actually moving air into the thoracic cavity, into your lungs, your diaphragm is doing the majority of the work. And actually, when you're at complete rest, so Matt, like you and I, and probably most people listening to this right now, your diaphragm would be doing pretty much all of the work. So that is going to be pulling all the air in. So as you actually inhale, you are going to have that diaphragm is going to move down, and then that is going to create more space in your thoracic cavity, and your lungs can expand, fill with air. And then as you relax, that is going to push back up or relax back up. And actually, to an extent, your internal organs actually help push air back out of your lungs and your thoracic cavity too. It's kind of cool how all that works and plays in. And then everything pushes back out. So that's a relatively passive, easy process. So that's...
Well, can I stop you there just for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I would like to pretend I know what the diaphragm is. I like to pretend. I like to say I think I could point to it, but I'm gonna play probably more real than ignorant here. We talk about the diaphragm. We talk about diaphragmatic breathing. Just what the heck is the diaphragm?
So great question. Great job pedaling me back there. So yes, your diaphragm is a muscle. It's a sheet of muscle. And it acts exactly like what you would imagine a diaphragm. It's a thin sheet of muscle that is going to be going across your rib cage, not at the bottom of your rib cage like most people assume it is.
Oh,
it's
really?
It's more middle of your rib cage. I want to say it's like level T8, but I could be off a couple levels there.
Nobody knows what that means. No one does. Well, I'm not saying nobody, because for the chiropractors out there, maybe, but you got to give me a diaphragm. T what?
Sorry. Yeah. Yes. The thoracic level. But anyway, it is more mid thoracic level is where you're going to find that mid to lower thoracic level. And as that flattens out and exerts, it's going to move down. So that's how that muscle contracts. So when it contracts, the muscle flattens. And so for those of you who are watching, you can kind of see what I'm going to do with my hands here. So I have them nice and caved up like that. That's how it's sitting in a relaxed position. And then as that muscle tightens and tenses up, it's going to flatten out. And then it's going to relax and come back up there. So that is what we have, how our diaphragm is actually working there.
So this is fascinating to me. So let's get into this a little bit, because this is sort of new to me. And it's one of those things I think in the kind of take the deep breath world, we talk about maybe without fully understanding it. As we've learned, don't take a deep breath, take a low and slow breath. So I'm gonna, and if you're not on video here, I'm just gonna try to verbally do. So I'm gonna move down. I'm starting at my neck. So my rib cage here is my diaphragm, kind of where my ribs start to split there. Like, is it more the heart area? Like, help me understand. Help me point to my diaphragm.
Yes. So you would be around the level of your sternum, around the level of the bottom of your sternum.
Okay.
Is where we're talking. Yes.
So and then it goes around the ribs.
Correct. And it is
okay.
It is going to completely connect the inside of your body all the way around your body at that level. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's a complete circle on the inside of your body. It totally divides your thoracic cavity, which is where your lungs and your heart and all that is. And then you have your stomach or your abdominal cavity, which is going to be the portion below your diaphragm. So your diaphragm is hanging out in that area in between, but it moves down and pushes and opens that thoracic cavity. And then when it comes up, it shortens that thoracic cavity. Does that make sense?
Okay. So on the inhale, it goes down and pulls in air.
Yes.
Correct. And on the exhale, it comes back to its upper position.
Correct.
Okay. Maybe I'm jumping ahead here. So if I am, just stop me. Chest breathing, that makes sense. Belly breathing, I need some help. So I don't know if it makes sense to talk chest versus belly at this point, because are we there yet, or do you need to give us a little bit more background?
Well, we can definitely get right into that, but because there's a lot more to the story. Right?
Okay.
So
Tell the story. I'll keep my mouth shut for a while.
So I'm going to make a similar arch here. So now my hands are no longer your diaphragm, but they're your rib cage. And actually I'll put my fingers like this, so it looks a little bit more like ribs, right? So your rib cage sits like this. And as you breathe in, your ribs actually expand out and up. So this is obviously an exaggeration, but they do this kind of motion as you breathe in, right? So that's also opening up that thoracic cavity. Now it's opening it in another dimension, right? It's not just opening down from our diaphragm, but it's also opening to the sides. It's expanding out. So if everybody listening, if you take a deep breath right now and you have your hands on your ribs, or you can feel where your ribs are at, you can feel that rib cage goes out to the side.
Okay.
And you can feel it actually kind of comes up a little bit too. And then when you exhale, especially if you exhale with force, you can feel that rib cage shrinks back down and in. So those are some other things that are also happening, but those are accessory breathing muscles that are going to be doing a lot of that work. And this is getting into a bit of what Ina was talking about when you talk about chest breathers and incorrect breathing types. But those are things that we don't want to be doing all of the time. Don't get me wrong. We want our rib cage to be expanding in and out with each breath, but our diaphragm should be the main mover. So if you are sitting like so Matt, you and I are sitting, but we're sitting with nice proper posture, right? If you're standing or sitting and you're leaning forward and you're crunched up, all of a sudden your diaphragm can't do its job anymore, right?
Okay.
So if you lean over, like if you're crouched, like you're typing at your computer, or you're driving and you're leaning forward, right? You're bent forward. Try to take a deep breath that way, right? You can't
Yeah.
take nearly as deep of a breath in
Yeah.
that position. Whereas if you sit up nice and tall, oh, you can really fill your lungs very deep,
Interesting. Yeah.
right? Because that muscle has so much more room to move. Now, if you're there chronically, what starts to happen, so if you're in that bent over forward position working all the time, what starts to happen is that you start to rely a lot more on these accessory breathing muscles. So your rib cage has to expand more to make up for that room. But another thing that has to happen is you have to start using the apices of your lungs. So that's referring to the top part of your lungs. And you're laughing as I say this.
I am. I have this massage chair that I love to death, and it's amazing how sore I get. Right there at the, not quite the neck area, but about a few inches down, right where you were pointing after a day of typing.
So are you leaning forward in that chair by chance?
Probably. Yeah. I would say, I have one of those chairs where my knees, I'm not sitting down, but I've got the thing where my butt's up and then my knees go behind.
Oh, a kneeling chair. Yeah.
So it helps with that. And so I have to, like, with my core, keep good posture. But I think the longer the day goes, the more I catch myself, bowing, even though it's kind of uncomfortable to do so with this chair on purpose.
Yes, well, chairs like that are awesome. I actually have a patent on one such chair that we are trying to release to the world at the moment to help with proper posture and core stability during
I cannot wait to get my
sitting.
Dr. Dave chair.
Yes, I hope everybody gets a Dr. Dave chair.
My friend, this is why I love doing podcasts with you, because we talk every week. I had no idea you had a pad on a chair. So I just have to throw that in. I enjoy our friendship in so many ways.
Yes. No, it's I should send you some prototype.
I'd love to see it. Absolutely.
Cool. So and I can't share those with everybody. Sorry. But when you're in that posture, and when I say apices of lungs, I'm talking about the tops of your lungs. So what most people don't realize is that your lungs go they go fairly low, and everybody knows that. Okay, yeah, my lungs are down here somewhere, right? But then what most people don't realize is that your lungs also come way up to here. And for those of you listening, I'm pointing at what would be referred to as like my traps or my trapezius muscle. So the top point of my shoulder here, and your lungs are right there as well. That's the apex of your lung. So that area is not normally supposed to be used. It's there to be reserved for times of large physical exertion, right? So like if you're running from a tiger or exercising really hard, right? Doing a CrossFit competition or running sprints or something, right? That's when you would use those other areas of your lungs. Now, if you're bent over like this all day and you're using those other muscles, those accessory breathing muscles, because you can't access the bottom part of your lungs, now these muscles, so Matt, like you were pointing, these muscles have to tighten up so that they can, because their job is to pull the top ribs off of those lungs to expand that part of the lung. So now they're making more room up there for breathing. And then that's when you see, like people like maybe like yourself to an extent, Matt, although you are sitting with excellent posture. When you go to palpate the muscles through here, which are called your scalene muscles, they are very tender and very tight. When we look at the upper trapezius muscles, a lot of times those are very tight as well. When we look at your levator scapulae muscles, those kinds of things, those tend to get very tight in people who are chronically in a posture like that and chronically breathing through the wrong part of their lung. So that's, importance of using your diaphragm, things that can go wrong when you're not using it correctly. And then of course that's also spills back over into the things that we were talking about last week, which was that also plays into that forward head posture, that, where you're going to start getting the discomfort at the low back of the head there, where your jaw is going to be in an improper position, and on and on and on, right?
Yeah.
Because I think we even, in addition to talking about nasal breathing, we did talk about tongue posture and
yeah, we did,
how your mouth should be during breathing and all that, right?
Could I ask you a quick question? And this probably falls into the bucket of stupid questions only Matt cares about, but I gotta ask it while we're on this part of the lungs. One of the things in my Qigong practice, and I'm not training for anything, I'm a hiker walker at this point, so nothing vigorous as far as much cardio. I just love to go 5-6 mile walks or hikes at this point, or longer ones on the weekend. So I'm not doing a ton of cardio where I have to, and being in Colorado, sometimes just walking, you have to take in a little bit more air. But there's this practice in Qigong, which I found was interesting. It's called Taoist breathing. Buddhist breathing is, in this tradition, is through belly breathing traditionally. Taoist breathing is chest breathing. And I was like, I don't have any research whatsoever why I would practice taking an upper chest breath during my morning mindfulness routine. But I'm like, hey, a few thousand years of tradition, let's give it a shot. What I found the first time I did it, something actually popped. I don't know what popped. I have no idea. But I heard something viscerally, like just kind of pop, not break, not anything like that, but just maybe pop in a knuckle lightly, like, oh, okay, something hasn't been used in a while sort of sound. And I was doing this because I would see when I was tracking my heart rate variability during using our biofeedback measure, I could still see I could get a lot of variation while a really focused mindfulness breathing into the upper chest during a resonance frequency breathing session. But the interesting thing about this is I felt really weak up here, which I don't know if that matters or not, but I felt really weak up here, which I didn't really care about until I got an upper respiratory infection called COVID. And the first time I got COVID, I hadn't been practicing this very much. The second time I got COVID, I've been practicing it for a year and a half. And there was a huge difference in how I experienced, and it could have been, I had a couple of vaccinations in me. It could have been a lot of variables that I can't track out. But I just kind of wonder, is there any reason, because I can't find it in the research, to do upper chest breathing practices at all that you have found? Again, maybe we can just put this in the stupid Mac question that only he cares about. But I found it really interesting is I built a strength in my upper chest. At least the second bout of COVID was much easier for me from a breathing perspective than the first bout.
So to speak to any research that I'm familiar with exactly on that, I do not know any offhand. However, like the Wim Hof type methods of breathing,
Yeah.
excuse me, are you familiar with those at all? Okay.
The dude that likes the cold.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And does some quite amazing feats. But that kind of stuff, like when you are doing that, very fast, quick.
Yeah.
That's what you're referring to, correct?
Well, no, because I'm doing it at my RF breathing rate.
Okay,
so which
that's,
is 4
that's
breaths
why I was
a minute.
confused, because you said RF breathing rate in that, but you said taking short upper chest.
No, not short. So RF, and my RF is 4 a minute. So they're pretty long. They're 15-second inhale, exhales. Well, 4 breaths per minute. So everybody can do the math on that. But so they're long.
And you're doing it all in your.
So really up here, expanding upper chest.
Huh. Yeah, I cannot say that I could refer to any research exactly on that. However, anything that is going to be expanding a different area of your chest is going to be stimulating something that you may not normally be stimulating.
Yeah.
And within your lungs, you have all sorts of macrophages and other little helpers that are gonna kill anything that comes into your lungs. So anything that does make it past our amazing filtration system of our nose,
Yeah.
which a virus is definitely small enough to make it past, um, something that does get down into our lungs, we do have these little guys down there that are going to help attack these things and hopefully kill them and wipe them out and get them out of our lungs before they do cause any problem. Unfortunately, in your case, it sounds like twice your system got beaten there.
Yeah.
But hey, you know what? You can look at it like it was immune system training.
Yeah.
The only way,
That upper respiratory. I
yeah,
said, and the other thing I should put in here is that I belly breathe every other, besides the probably 10 minutes of my practice that I do with the Taoist breath. Every other breath that I take pretty much during the day is through the belly. So it's also it was an odd experience of just, it's kind of like the first time you snowboard in the season. Like there's certain muscles that I use in snowboarding that I just don't use in anything else in my life. And
right.
you kind of feel those muscles after the first day. By the end of the season, they're kind of broken in. So that's when I started to do this breathing. It just felt like there were muscles up here that I weren't using that may or may not have played in with my second bout of COVID. So I just thought it was an interesting strategy because, like you, I had no really research basis on why to do this. But because I do stomach breathing every other breath pretty much throughout my day, I've continued it. One, because I strength up here helped me during an upper respiratory infection. And I can see my heart rate variability during practice maintains while I'm up there. So I don't feel like I'm doing any harm to myself. Like I've got data to show it's no worse for what I'm training than if I do belly breathing. So it's like, this is just fun to play around with. So
yeah, no, that is cool, and it never hurts to stimulate a different area of the lungs. Just like you were comparing with the muscles, it's only going to be something that helps in the long term with training. I'm not encouraging chest breathing for everybody.
Yeah, neither am I. Yeah.
But doing something that does stimulate that part of your lungs on a regular basis is a good idea anyway. It's like people who exercise intensely regularly will get that. So if you're not exercising intensely, might breathing like that do a similar thing? It's very possible. And might that stimulation help with, battling something off? Absolutely. Because we do know, in terms of COVID, people who simply exercise on a regular basis did significantly better than those who did not. So it's very possible.
All right. So upper chest breathing. Yeah, Matt, you're weird, but let's talk about, because I used to breathe all through my upper chest. That's what I learned back like 20 years ago is I was breathing wrong, which is a really horrible thing to learn about yourself. Like I screw up so much in my life breathing, but so because in Western culture, at least, we all, no matter who we are, usually want to have that chest sticking out, right? And I was just fascinated when I first heard sort of about diaphragmatic or belly breathing. I'm like, am I really screwing up breathing? And turns out I was. So let's keep moving down, and let's if we're ready to look at the belly breathing.
Yes. So when you say that, that's funny because yeah, you can think about, when you're trying to be at the beach and you got your you're trying to hold your stomach nice and flat while you're walking around and when in reality, yes, that's not where you want to be. So letting your stomach naturally move out and back in with each breath is the best thing. And the reason why is not because your belly is doing anything, but because your diaphragm. So we're going back to that diaphragm, because when your diaphragm skirts down, so when it pushes down, it's literally pushing your abdominal contents, not just forward, but in every direction. So in reality, if you were to hold your hand, so like if I cupped my waist, with my hands like this, I would want to feel on each inhale, not only my abdomen moving straight forward, but I'd want to feel the sides of my stomach expanding. And I also want to feel the back of my lower back. So the back side of my stomach, right? I want to feel that expanding too. And for a lot of people, they can usually get the feel on the front and the sides, but a lot of people have a real hard time with that posterior side.
So
oh, go ahead.
On your regular, sorry, this is great podcasting. We're going to win an award for this episode of 19 Breathe Between Questions. I guess I can't do, like, on your normal breath, does the back of your abdomen?
I can't answer that because I don't always have my hands there, but I know that if I palpate, I can definitely make it happen.
Okay,
interesting. And I like to think that it's happening. So you should breathe out in a cylinder. So your whole abdomen, the whole way around, should expand out and back in. Of course, on the back, you're going to have the lowest amount of movement because, well, you have a lot of really strong muscles on the back side of your body. Plus you have this thing called your spinal column back there. So, there's some things in the way. But on the front side, our abdominal muscles, despite what you want them to look like, should not always be flexed. So just
when I oil up for the model shoots, right?
Right. Yeah. So those should be relaxed enough that they're not always tensed. And then same, you shouldn't have you shouldn't have anything limiting your abdomen from moving forward and to the sides with each breath in. So that's the true mark of health, is somebody who can really move their abdomen, not like that, not a six pack.
So now let's bring that back. So quick question. This is just one you could probably just swing the bat at and knock it out. Is every breath a diaphragmatic breath? Is the diaphragm always, whether I'm chest breathing or stomach breathing, is that I'm assuming that's always happening?
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
So does the diaphragm, no matter how we breathe, is it doing that flexing that you showed us?
Yes, it is too. So it's without a doubt to a point.
Okay.
Even if you're totally crunched over, it's trying to do that.
Because it's pulling air into your upper chest. Then, am I correct there?
Yes, you have to create negative space. So you have to create negative space, or negative pressure rather, within your chest cavity for your lungs to expand. So that space has to come from somewhere, and your diaphragm is the biggest source of that space. So like even when you're totally crunched over or something, you'll notice it's harder to breathe. But is your diaphragm still trying to excrete down? Absolutely.
Is it? Okay.
That's not something that you have control over, which muscles you try to use for breathing.
Yeah.
You can intentionally do, puff your chest way up. And you can absolutely get that going. But your diaphragm is going to go up and down regardless. It's just how much movement is actually allowed with each breath, which is why we want to have that good posture. And I do want to actually talk about your core really quick in relation to breathing too. But did you have another question prior to that?
I guess my other question is, when I, as a practiced belly breather, I don't feel much expansion at all on my low and slow breathing anywhere in my ribs. So almost zero. So am I still using my diaphragm as much as with belly breathing?
Yes.
Okay.
You're arguably only using your diaphragm or majority, which is good. That is
okay.
Really
so I'm still using my diaphragm, even though my ribs aren't really moving a ton.
Correct.
Okay.
Because your diaphragm moving down, if your diaphragm has enough room, you don't have to flare your ribs out as much.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and again, these are things that our body figures out for us, right?
Okay, yeah.
Because you wouldn't want to have to be in charge of that, right? Oh, I think the
Right.
diaphragm's
Way
all
too
the
much
way
other
up
stuff to
breath.
think about. Yeah. Like your chair. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Let's talk about the core.
So something that is so interesting, and the more and more that I learned about this, the more the cooler it was. Quick aside, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping back here, but that pop that you said that you heard with your breathing, that can a lot of times, I imagine that you felt some relief and possibly felt like you could breathe deeper right after. So most likely, you had a rib that was slightly displaced, which is not an uncommon thing at all. Probably most people listening to this have some kind of slight displacement of a rib or two. And if you took a deep breath in, that might have been enough force to actually make that rib literally pop back into place, and where you would actually find quite a bit of relief, because now instead of that rib being fixed in place and not moving up and down with each breath, now all of a sudden when you take that breath in, that rib can rotate as it's supposed to and not have any restriction. So
wow, that helps, because I had no idea what popped in. It kind of felt like it was a rib popping, but that made like zero sense to me once I realized I had damaged myself and needed to call 911 because I broke something. I was like, what? So that really helps, because I'm like, how's a rib, where's that coming from? And thank you.
yes. Okay, so back to the core stability. So how that works, when you talk about core stability and when you talk about working your core right at the gym, most people think about your rectus abdominis, or what makes up your six-pack muscles. There's actually 8 of them. So if you only have 6, you're really lacking. But it is far from that. So we have a muscle called our transverse abdominis. Have you ever heard of this, Matt?
I have not.
Okay. So we have 4 layers of abs. We have our rectus abdominis, which is the ones that we see. Then we have our obliques, which everybody has heard of, and those guys come in at an oblique angle, right? We have internal and external obliques. So there's 2 layers of those, and those completely wrap our body. And then we have a transverse abdominis, which is the deepest layer of abdominals. And that is like your own weightlifting belt. So if you put on a weightlifting belt, you basically you're actually limiting the function of your own transverse abdominis. Fun fact. Which is why I say to not wear a weightlifting belt unless you have a significant injury or you're like maxing out or something like that. But anyway, when you take a breath in, when you're breathing properly and your diaphragm moves down, that air is pushing, that is pushing all of the abdominal contents out. And then that recoil action is actually happening from your transverse abdominis. So that's helping to an extent. So if you are breathing properly, you're actually doing core training, which is really kind of cool.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my gosh, I'm working my abs just by just by breathing properly. So it's so that is, that's also something that's kind of cool about this, is that if you are breathing properly, you are actually strengthening your core within that process. And then there's a whole nother layer to this, which we won't get into as well, but you also have an additional diaphragm in your pelvic floor that should expand and contract with each breath as well.
Keep going. I may have some pelvic floor questions towards the end, but I want to make sure we get through this before Matt asks another stupid Matt question.
So. No, you're fine. But that diaphragm is another muscular diaphragm made up of several different muscles. But that's where women who've given birth, for example, have a lot of trouble with incontinence. And if they work those muscles through proper breathing and proper core training, and then you can actually do a lot of exercises specifically for those muscles. Kegels is one such exercise that has gotten a lot of publicity.
Mhm.
But there is things that you can do such as that to help strengthen that diaphragm as well. So it really is a whole stacked system that we have here. And that's where, like anything in the human body, you can never just focus on one piece of it. It's literally the entire thing plays into everything that we do. So,
okay, pelvic floor. I found it interesting. So, Tai Chi, Qigong. I like to joke that my pelvic floor can influence the rotation of the earth at this point. I've contracted it so much. So I don't know if I'll ever use it, but don't mess with my pelvic floor. So when I mentioned the Buddhist breathing or the Taoist breathing, there is a contraction and release of the pelvic floor intentionally, either on the inhale or exhale, depending on the method you're using. And just, so if you're a Qigong fan like I am, you're really, what they say in Qigong is that it helps the qi to flow. Whatever you think about qi, that's like the theory behind it, is that it helps. And it sounds like, again, this is a little bit where science is backing up that traditional thinking, though I know the breath to chi is a jump that would takes a lot more to fill in those blanks. It sounds like that contraction though would help with the breathing, but I guess I've never understood as a kind of a second diaphragm. So when I breathe without the intentional contraction and release, how does that kind of play into the breathing that I'm doing normally?
Like how does that expand and contract as well? Is that what?
Yeah. So like on the inhale, it sort of relaxes, I think, and on the exhale contracts, or
yes, you
okay.
have that right. So that a diaphragm, and I guess we can do it this way, right? So it's going to move down and then back up. So
gotcha.
Like that, and of course, there's not that significant of a movement, but it is something that you would work on. So, like, say you were doing exercises specifically for that, you would, you could do one where you literally have, your hand or your fingers on your perineum, and you would be doing breathing exercises, preferably in a laying position, face up, and you can feel that move with some of those breaths.
But interesting that there's biofeedback specifically for that as well, which I found. I'm rereading Nina's book because I do that every about 3 months. When I realize there's more I still need to learn and go back and reinforce, but that's actually a form of biofeedback, which I found fascinating. Again, something that I've learned in a historical tradition that, like I said, every exhale, that contraction, and it does, I find when I'm really focused that there's almost another level beyond, like I'm opening up the hips, I guess would be the best way to describe it on the inhale, which is a whole like different sort of area that I never was able to kind of breathe into. Like, can I get this down to my toes? Like I don't think so, but it's like, what is this that I'm playing around with? But seeing that as a diaphragm, it does feel like there's some space opening up there where, I don't know, breath going into it probably isn't the right word, but really expands on that inhale as well.
Well, like a lot of types of meditation, maybe and then they may do this in the Qigong that you do, but they do, they focus on breathing into, your, I believe it's your root chakra, right? Breathing down into that, breathing down into, that is something that you focus on, and that's a best way of describing it. I guess you could say, is air actually going there? No, but in a way, right, through your through blood flow, I guess. But there is specialists. Actually, I refer to my favorite pelvic floor specialist up here quite often, and she's a physical therapist who has pelvic floor women's health is all she works on that, and diastasis recti, which is a splitting of the abdomen that happens during pregnancy, and happens with guys with beer bellies too. It can happen for other reasons too, but those are the most common. But that causes core instability, which causes improper breathing and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, any woman who is pregnant and starts seeing me, I have them start seeing her at the same time, so that they can start training their pelvic floor, so that they have spontaneous reconnection. They do core exercises and pelvic floor exercises, so that they can have spontaneous reconnection of their abdomen post-pregnancy, and as well that they don't have some of those not so fun after birth effects that a lot of women do suffer from.
Awesome. So you're saying we might have a guest where we can talk about the pelvic floor for an entire hour?
Oh, she would love it.
I would love that.
A complete hoot. Yeah, she's a very fun lady.
So I know we're about hitting time here. I wanted to see if there's anything else that we need to cover, but also, I think some of the connections here to heart rate variability are pretty obvious. Everything we've talked about, and really this 3 episodes so far, we know that there's a lot of data out there, supports ventral vagal functioning, helps regulate sympathetic functioning. So I just kind of want to throw a question. Anything else that we still need to cover, and any connections that you sort of want to make between what we're covering and heart rate variability as well?
Oh, Matt, you cut out in the very last part of that question there.
So heart rate, anything else we need to cover, and specifically around heart rate variability that we'd want to throw in here?
So the biggest thing with any of this, which continues to be the thread, is to make sure that your breaths are not short, that you're not in a crouched position, that you are allowing your diaphragm to fully excursion down, so that your overall posture is correct. And of course, starting with oral and tongue posture, breathing through your nose, and taking that slow, long inhale, and then your exhale, which can actually be through your mouth or your nose. But that is what is going to provide for the best overall results. Excuse me. But that in relation to HRV is going to give the best long-term results as well. So those would be the biggest things to highlight, the biggest things to focus on, is that give your body a chance. Your autonomic nervous system is just the most fantastic thing that we are all gifted with. So let it do its job. Just put yourself in a good position to do it. And for those of you working on computers all day, buy my chair.
Yes, Dr. Dave's chair. I cannot wait.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's well, someday soon. Right.
Awesome. And the really cool thing about this too, that I really encourage, if you're on an app like ours, where you can do the biofeedback while following a breathing pacer, getting your RF frequency, really can play around with this stuff. One of the things I enjoy, because I get bored really quick, is, I had a question, does my chest breathing, because everything I've kind of read says that should probably deactivate my ventral vagal and my heart rate should go up, my heart rate variability should go down. But I don't know if it's because of my focus, my practice with it, is that I see a maintaining that great sort of up and down on my heart rate as I'm monitoring it when I'm doing my practice. So the great thing about this is you can try different positions, you can try to adjust and really measure how this is impacting your heart rate variability. So, what that low and slow breath, the extended exhale, all those things is that you can sort of measure and sort of find, that's what I love about RF frequency or RF breathing rate. I've got mine, like I've got it. And, I can practice it on the app. I can get the heart rate variability metrics on it, but I can also just use it. I like to use it when I'm like heading up the chairlift to get a snowboarding run in, or, just if I'm sitting around and just kind of maybe on a break from work and just, it's a good time to count my inhales and exhales. And just that real focused breathing as we have this tool that just helps us improve cognitive health, mental health, social health, medical health. That's free.
Absolutely free, and it is the best way. That's the coolest thing. And like you were saying, Matt, I love that you sneak it in whenever you can.
Yes.
Because what is so cool about our system is that when you are doing these things on a regular basis, they start to just happen on their own.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, all of a sudden one day you realize you're just doing it.
Yeah. Well, when
really
again,
cool.
just as the fanboy of RF frequency or RF breathing, like, even though we're not shooting to breathe at that rate all the time, the great thing about that, like belly breathing took me a while to just, now it's unconscious. With RF, it's like going to the gym for my autonomic nervous system. Like, I'm not trying to change. Yeah, well, I'm breathing healthier because of it, but this focus time that I do each day just has that residual impact where it's like going to the gym, go hard. I'm going to stop eventually, but I'm going to get the positive impact on that goes well beyond after the training has stopped. And as I've seen my morning readings, RMSSD readings, I tell you what, that RF practice, it's one of those, I could say, hey, I was focusing on recovery, yes, but that doesn't account for like the 80-point increase in average that I've been experiencing. And while that's probably atypical, I don't think it's a mistake that happened right when that RF functionality hit our app and I started doing it every day.
Absolutely no coincidence. Yeah. No, it is very cool. That vagal function, very big increase with regular RF breathing. Absolutely.
Awesome, my friend. Well, thank you so much. Like always, visit us at heartrateVariabilityPodcast.com or OptimalHRV.com. And Dave and I have a big announcement, I believe. Hopefully, if everybody's schedules hold out, that will be our next podcast. Yes. So stay tuned. Big announcement coming in the next episode. So, Dr. Dave, always great to see you and can't wait to get my butt on your chair, my friend.
Thanks.